controlling class is not interested in having people understand this because, first of all, this leads to the causal factors, the understanding of the causal factors about why humanity is in the current conditions that we're in. Many people will have no answer for that. They don't understand the causal factors.
Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix on the 10th of March 2019. So freedom, spiritual, political, economic is denied any importance in the trilateral construction of the next century. What the trilaterals truly intend is the creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political power of the nation states involved. They believe the abundant materialism they propose to create will overwhelm existing differences. As managers and creators of this system, they will rule the future. Rule the world, basically. Always the old agenda. But of course, once, this is my own words, but once they've done all that, of course, which they're pretty well done. That's what the whole free trade system's about. That's why they get the GATT treaty on steroids and brought China up and made them the manufacturers for the planet. China didn't do it themselves. So there you go. And the overwhelming existing differences with abundant materialism. So materialism would put you all to sleep, basically. If you tie that in with the lectures and the talks that Aldous Huxley gave, where he said that, the people would be willing slaves, basically, kind of happy slaves, contented slaves. And it's through materialism, you see. Shop till you drop, etc. Credit cards, blah, 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 blah. And once they change and start withdrawing the surplus from the materialistic system and bring into austerity, you'll still go along with their system as long as you get little freebies here and there, little cheap things here and there too. You'll still go along with it. But in the process, initially, there'll be no complaining at all as they take out all your rights away from you. That's already happening, basically. So the last part again, freedom, spiritual, political, and economic is denied so you have no economic freedom, right, for anybody or any nation eventually, or political system different from the universal one they're bringing in, and the spiritual one, they're going to have no credence to any particular religion eventually. They'll use them. They'll use different ones to be the top ones that will appear to be the top ruling religions for a period and then destroy them naturally. Because the system has destroyed the religions of the West quite successfully, didn't it? They brought in the sexual revolution, right? 1960s, they brought in abortion for everybody. So don't worry about the fallout from the sex. You see, the state will take care of it. Until marriage, that one of the goals, the goals, isn't it strange? You think it's strange, it's not strange at all, that the goal of Marxism was the destruction of the family unit. Huh? And for most people, eventually the destruction of private property. Read Agenda 21 for private property, folks. Agenda for the whole 21st century. Huh? The 2030 is just parts of it, segments of it as you go through it that they must achieve. But the thing for the whole 21st century has all of that in it too. It's on track for this new improved system. The same thing will happen even with Islam too down the road. That's what they hope for. Because once a culture that's had so many taboos about certain things to restrain themselves into a workable society, and you bring them into the West, and if they can keep that going, the massive deluge of sexual images you're deluged with from childhood right through on television and movies and everything, that'll work with everybody. Doesn't matter who they are until they fall apart too. So again, like the old song of the Rolling Stones in tribute to the devil, basically, time is on my side. They don't care if it takes them 20 years or 30 years or 40 to bring a particular people down. And it will be interesting to see if Islam will really push really against all that stuff and try to keep their family units intact and their systems intact. Or will they, I think already, a lot of the young guys are already falling to the temptations, and it's been well noticed by those, by their elders. But we're living through this massive system of incredible control. We really are. And the West has been through all the different revolutions, thinking it was all fun. Isn't it amazing how it's all fun, you know, in the 60s. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, take drugs, do it, and have fun. Yeah? As they destroyed it all. And here you are. And folk can't even get a friend for more than a month or two, you know. The genders are all screwed up with relationships because they can't get anybody to stay with them pretty well. Or if they initially do, they'll get bored with them if they keep watching television and movies. The whole job is to make you unhappy with what you have. It's a war strategy, you see. Most war strategies and revolutions are bloodless, but incredibly effective. Anyway, that was what Goldwater said in I think, 79. So the Trilateral Commission place all these technocrats in all these positions of control. They're not responsible to the general public or to complaints from the general public. They do what they've planned to do, and they get on with it. They're not answerable to the public. Maggie Thatcher said that she was then, when she retired, she said she now belonged to a group. And she's talking about the group, same group actually, in Britain, under the Royal Institute for International Affairs group. And she says, I know all the ex-prime ministers and presidents across the world and the top bureaucrats basically. And it says, we can get things done without being responsible to the public. There you go. You get all the clues all the time, and folk miss it because you're trained to be a child and to stay a child and to leave your thinking to what you're trained to think as your betters, these special names and special people on television that speak with authority, you know, and they're built up like superstars, and they speak with authority. That's why they kept anchor men and women on television for their entire lives as they were falling off the chairs as geriatrics, because the people grew up with them. It was so evident in the US, and Britain was the same. There was a particular guy in Britain who spent his life in the BBC, and anything important ever happened in that whole time, he was the one to tell you in a stern way what was happening in the official manner. And that was like his law. You had the same thing in the US too. And of course in the US they were all members of the World Federalist Society, these characters. That's just the way it is, you know. The ones that gave you your news, that's the way it is, yeah. All looking for an agenda that the public were completely ignorant of, but the public would take their opinions that were given to them and just parrot them without thinking. Who would lie to you? I mean, how trusting a child are you? If you looked at the history of the world and at every nation, the histories, they're all so similar. It's astonishing. Maybe I'm prattling too much because the time just runs out here. And I'll have shoveling with snow to do shortly. And I'll put up the one on world government, some of the links for world government from the official sites, from governments themselves. And we can have all that there too. Also too, they give you your superstars. I remember as one of the brand guys who was targeted by the Unabomber, and the Unabomber mentioned really why he was targeting this particular group. This is part of the group that was bringing you the new culture. They worked with the CIA. The guy Brandt he said in one of his talks that part of his job was to make scientists, I mean the ones who would lead you into superstars, so you'd follow them and you'd follow their opinions. Can you think of any today? Of course you do. These guys it's the same machinery of making a nobody into a pop star or a rock star or whatever. Same thing. Zuckerberg, another one too. Oh yeah, you just a front man. Anyway, it says outlines privacy-focused vision, and that's to do with all the well, anybody who still uses what they give you, you know what they're doing. You want to be a little child monitored by Big Brother? That is your right to do so. And also last week, I think, or the week before, I mentioned too, this is deep fakes, what they call deep fakes. And it says the scope of high-tech deception keeps growing, and experts say deep fakes could become the biggest threat to truth. It's when an artificial intelligence algorithm, a neural network, generates a video that never happened, by either swapping one face for another or by allowing someone's motions and voice to be mapped onto another person. It's a video that has been created by essentially feeding in a computer algorithm lots of images of a person, said Andy Grotto, national security expert and professor at Stanford University. It could be video, it could even be audio, and you feed it through enough of that content, and over time the algorithm learns how to mimic that content. Technology that powers deepfakes is only growing more sophisticated, and they give examples of where it is now. These early deepfake videos looked obviously doctored, but BuzzFeed produced a frighteningly realistic example last year by having actor and director Jordan Peele make a PSA about deepfakes as former US President Barack Obama. It goes on and on. Not to show. This is how they're going to give you the fake trials that are going to come down the road. When did you say something like the Orwell's 1984, where you're pulled into the Ministry of Truth, and the Ministry of Love will ask you all the questions about what's to torture you. And we're here, folks. And then they'll bring out the deep fakes and say, this is a video of you saying that, or being here, or saying that, or whatever. And the public will go along with it because the authorities said it. The authorities said it. Quite easy, isn't it? To do with eugenics too. Now, don't think that China, as I said before, does things by itself. It was created by the West, same group that runs and owns the West now, the same uniform system. And really, that China is their shining example of the perfectly ordered socialist system run scientifically, and the West helped them and set it all up and give them the expertise and the money. I mean, they even put our factories over there. We paid for our factories to be dismantled and put over there under the free trade agreement. And we lost all the jobs at home. Nobody was given a vote on that. Just these technocrats again, and your governments all signed on to it, and that's it. You're never asked your opinion for anything that matters, folks. Never will be either. So the Chinese government may have funded disgraced scientist He Jiankui to create the world's first gene-edited babies, the report claims. That was the Mail Online. And it said that the documents seen by medical news site STAT, suggest that Chinese scientist He Jiankui may have received money from 3 separate government institutions in China. Now, China's not the only country. Every country's been doing this. Gene editing. India's been doing it for quite some time, actually. And they've had documentaries on the TV years ago on that, where they actually talked to some of the people who had their babies designed, basically. Genes removed, another ones replaced, etc., for height, and for looks, etc. It's odd, too, the different cultures, of what they go for first, where it's high intellects, or looks, etc., or height, It's quite interesting to see what they go for. But every country's been doing this, and every nation, because they had articles years ago in all the top magazines and newspapers about the British, and then the US military especially making the new robotic type soldiers that would be basically cloned. So don't think that by some silly little bit of paper that they've all signed, they don't do it. Of course they do it. Same with biological warfare. It never stopped with all the trees. Never did. So you can't blame China. And it's interesting though, that they put it across there, getting used to an idea that this is coming, just like I've said before, like the movie Gattaca, with the expertly run society, of course. You'll find the trained front people, and they really do, they pick them as children and train them for positions of leadership. You'll find the big NGOs have ads about that, and they actually say about, their about thing and what they're up to and so on. They tell you that they'll pick youngsters with the aptitudes and train them for positions of power and leadership. They all do that. So much for spontaneous people appearing who just appear out of nowhere. Now, these people are all trained and selected, and they're devoted, believe you me, to the agenda, because that's all that's been drummed into them their whole lives long, and they're well rewarded for it as they mislead you and lead you up the garden path. All of them do that. So you don't have a free society. You'll never get anybody who's genuine, who's going to talk for you. It ain't going to happen, folks. No way. I mentioned last week too about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the so-called Democrat, who came out as they put her up to be a star, the star machinery again, a little nobody. It's legitimate for young people to ask if it's okay to have children, you see. Because you see, don't forget that they floated that idea too in all their socialistic meetings for well over 150 years about limiting people having children and using the China model, but also before even the China model came along, in fact, when they weren't communist, they were pushing the same idea in the late 1800s in Britain. And into the early 1900s, George Bernard Shaw said the same thing. He was all for it. He says, we'll decide if you can have children or not, according to your IQ level, etc. That's all part of it, folks. They breed out all the bad folk, all the general public, you see, the commoners, because they're awfully snobbish, believe you me. The Democrats, Liberals and Conservatives, they're awfully snobbish at the very, very top. They all are, because they all belong to the same clique. And they don't send their children to ordinary schools either, folks. It doesn't matter if they pretend to speak for the working classes. It's like Britain, none of them do. None of the ones that are pushing and telling you that the education system's fantastic in ordinary schools in Britain, none of them send their children to them. All the politicians for Labour, I think, are all go to the best private schools. Because they're going to make sure their children are going to be the winners. Of course they are. Big agendas on the go. But they give you the leaders. They certainly do. When I was going through the eugenics movement about Julian Huxley, for instance, big player, and a big player, incredible. The man was incredible. I mean, he voiced everything I'm saying here openly in his big speeches. And eventually he was up there with Planned Parenthood, of course. And he was a member of UNESCO, the head of it for a while, to create a common culture by indoctrination of children across the world. That's how you do it. You give them the topics, you brainwash it into them. Oh, the sky is falling, too many people. Oh, sustainability, yada, yada, yada. Going way back to the early 1900s, folks. There's nothing new. And at the same time, about 1950 and so on, they set up all the ecological organizations as far back at the same time that Julian Huxley, he was involved in them all. That's the one that eventually uses a big stick. Oh, we're destroying the world. The Gaia will kick back at you, and it'll just shake itself, and you'll all die because you've mistreated her, you see. They've tried everything they can. So sustainability and the sky is falling is the one they chose and they've stuck to. And now it's their religious mantra, basically the trained generation of children. To quote the man, what was it that Lenin said? We shall win by slogans about it all the time. Look at these rallies and their slogans. That's what, it's only a three-worded slogan repeated over. Just like Orwell said, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Mind you, today I guess you can have as many legs as you want. It's your choice to do so. But it says here, the Ecological Society of America. It really started in Britain too, you see. They've got a branch in every country now. It's a professional organization of ecological scientists based in the United States and founded in 1915. ESA, Ecological Society of America, publications include peer-reviewed journals, newsletters, fact sheets, and teaching resources. It holds annual meetings at different locations in the US and Canada. In addition to its publications, annual means ESA is engaged in public policy. Do you vote for them? No, you don't. Of course not. Science, education, and diversity issues. Isn't that interesting, eh? Its 10,000 members are researchers, educators, natural resource managers, and students in over 90 countries. Members work on a wide range of topics from agroecology, that's all your food supply, to marine diversity, and explore the relationship between organisms and their past, present, and future environments. You have to understand what you mean by organisms and their past, present, and future environments. It's a topic in itself that they're all brainwashed into. All these organizations are. And eugenics too. Society has over 20 typical sections and 7 regional chapters. That's quite interesting, as I say. The people who are all members of it and at the beginning, etc. You'll find in the branches in Britain for these organizations that did share the same offices in London at one point for most of them. You find that Julian Huxley was up there as members of the boards, actually. It's quite fascinating how sustainability, eugenics, etc. are all tied together in this one organization's mindset that rules the world, and where they're going with it all too. You find the molecular vision of life, getting back to this molecular vision of life, how the aims of eugenics, social control, and human engineering shaped molecular biology and the 20th century science. It's interesting. But you have to understand what they're talking about, the molecular vision of life, and how it all ties in with eugenics, and how the Rockefellers literally funded it all and put it through Caltech. And this is the rise of the new biology of how you would now look at humans and everything else in your place in the world is like a species, like any bacterium in a sense, and how you could manipulate it all. Control, that was the function of training, so the people would believe it all, and it would give them social control, and they can go into human engineering by teaching them a kind of slanted version of and a way to look at society and people. It is molecular, it's constructs rather than actual complete human beings. It's quite fascinating to me in a way. It might bore you, but it's fascinating to me. Yeah, Julian Huxley is astonishing, all the things he's been involved in. Absolutely. Julian Huxley and the continuity of eugenics in 20th century Britain. Very good article. And this is the life and ideas of Julian Sorrell Huxley. Represent not only considerable contributions to evolutionary theory, but also to eugenics, thought, and social planning. I haven't mentioned anybody yet who's elected to anything by the public. Huxley's career and history was complex and disjointed, making him an international and very much a public figure. They made a star of him too. Same thing, star-making machinery. This paper sees Huxley's peripatetic career as linked to ideological agendas, not least of a New World Order, it says here. And it goes on and on and on. The problems addressed here are first, the extent of continuities in eugenics, commitments from his interwar views, and second, to determine the contours of Huxley's post-Second World War eugenical thinking. And Huxley emerges as a crucial bridging figure from what has been referred to as old eugenics, and up to Germany and Nazis using it in World War II. And they copied it all from the West, by the way, and especially from America. They got slammed for that. So Huxley, Julian Huxley, reinvented it, you see, under different terminology, but kept it alive and well, and was all for phasing out. He wanted to breed only the well-to-do upper middle class types, and to gradually kill off, basically one way or another, all the rest of the public that they didn't need anymore. This guy, his test bed was the British public. Don't think these people ever stand for you and see and relate to you as their own. They do not do that. Never have done that, folks. Never have. Never have. But it's quite an interesting little, and of course they don't condemn the guy either. If anything, make excuses for him. But it's interesting to see them. They go into the Galton Club, formed at the college, in Oxford. And further debates took place at the Oxford Union from 1919 to 1925. Huxley was a fellow at New College, and the population geneticist J.B.S. Haldane, Huxley's former fag, they call it at Eton, was a fellow from 1919 until 1922. Huxley's students include the cytologist and contraceptions pioneer J.R. Baker, who was undergraduate at New College from 1919 to 1922, and population geneticist E.B. Henry Ford, it says here. The biosocial theorists represented a political spectrum from Haldane on the extreme left to Ford and the later Oxford recruit, the botanist Darlington, on the extreme right. They all continued to exert influence on questions of biology and society on into the 1960s. Actually beyond that too. So these movements with their philosophies are a very old agenda, folks. Very old agenda. And it's still going on today. Bertrand Russell, of course, was a good friend of them all, of course, and worked with them too. And he was quite blatant about them by the use of injections, diet injections and injunctions. We can reduce the population. Russell also said you can really dumb the people down when you're doing all that too. He's quite blatant about it through the same kind of methods as well, apart from just bumping them off. It's really fascinating to see different characters involved in this and their complete connection. How they even used, by the way, and Julian Huxley did it too, became a supposed zoologist. He started talking about wildlife to get all the young children on. And during all the talks in wildlife and little furry animals and stuff, you don't realize you're getting brainwashed as a child into, well, I guess that applies to people too. You know, if there's too many, you must kill them off. Every country has been given their favorite zoologist who all talk about the same things, and too many of this population, too many of that, and then eventually as they get older, they start talking about too many of you. There you go. Political and economic planning is another PEP group as well, to do with eugenics in Britain, that Julian Huxley was involved in. All the top ones were too. It says it was a British policy think tank formed in 1931 in response to Max Nicholson's article, National Plan for Britain. National Plan for Britain. Eugenics, right? Published in February of that year in Gerald Barry's magazine, The Weekend Review. Original members included Nicholson. This is a private organization again, right? They belong to all the other top organizations. So Nicholson and Barry, the zoologist Julian Huxley, an agronomist, Leonard Elmhurst, the financier, Basil Phillott Blackett, and the civil servants, Dennis Roth and Sir Henry Bunbury, and the research chemist, Michael Zvegindzov, and Israel Zaif, a director of Marks and Spencer. Zaif was chairman in the 1930s, followed by Elmhurst in 1939 and by Nicholson in 1953. It was a non-governmental planning organization financed by corporations to do with eugenics on the general public, folks, and too many of them, etc. The prolific organization was influential in the formation of, guess what, the National Health Service. So they helped draft up stuff long before it came in, right? But remember, the National Health Service, to the general public, now, it's just like today with all the cheaper goods from China. Oh, wow, it's great. What's the real motive of it all? I've already read it to you. Don't overwhelm you with, oh, it's fantastic. As they start taking rights away from, oh, well, we've still got all this free stuff and cheap stuff. And, you know, it's always an, oh, well, so what? And the same with the National Health Service. Don't forget, the agenda of the eugenicists was to bring down the population by all means possible. And what's their favorite technique? Even Ronald Reagan talked about the most fearful things that citizens can hear is from officials coming to their doors saying, we're from the government, we're here to help you. Because you better be on guard. National Health Service, inoculations, and in no time at all, with a span of maybe, less under 20 years, they were doing abortions on National Health Service in Britain. And so they, again, eugenics, depopulate, etc. And once you have a National Health Service, then you simply have your abortion days. And they do have abortion days. Every hospital over in Britain has them. That's all they do, And they couldn't do that without having a National Health Service. And now with the National Health Service, they don't have the money. They've got lots to do with all kind of strange things in the National Health Service and strange operations and stuff. But for really essential things, that they claim that they're broke. So you have to say, well, why isn't it doing the main things that was really you thought it was designed to do in the first place? Well, maybe you thought it was designed for something else in the first place. They always give you candy to begin with, right? And then they substitute the candy for something else as time goes on. Post-war planning and the development of the African colonies as well. They were heavily involved in programs for the African colonies. After the war, it shared the offices of, listen, the Nature Conservancy in Belgrave Square, London, right? So here is the Eugenics Society and National Political and Economic Planning Committee, all private NGOs that form for themselves on behalf of the real rulers of the world, of course, with top financiers and everything there, and bankers and everything there, right? And it says here, they end up pushing for a national health service and development of the African colonies. Afterwards, it shared offices at the Nature Conservancy in Belgrave Square, London, producing reports such as opportunities in industry and advisory committees in British government. So here again, advisory committees, see? What do you think the Council on Foreign Relations is? It says it on their own website, advisory committee, they advise governments. Well, do you elect them to advise? No, you don't, no. In 1970, the PEP merged with the Centre for the Study of Social Policy, see? Now, social policy covers everything, folks, and became the Policy Studies Institute. Isn't that interesting, eh? So the Political and Economic Planning Committee become the Policy Studies Institute, the Centre for Study of Social Policy. So they advise governments on social policy. Do you vote them in? No. Nope. Nope, not at all. But it's got chemists here, research chemist Henry Burnbury. Interesting, a chemist, was on the panel of the first board. Civil servants at Dennis Roth, of course. It says here, Israel Saif, director at Marks and Spencer, and Elmhurst as well. Zoologists were members of it too. Again, eugenics, you see. They used animals' behavior, but really it applied to humans. Study them. Because humans, they say, are animals, you see. And it was Julian Huxley, remember, who said himself that their job at UNESCO, he said in a speech, was to knock man off his stool, or his high stool as a supreme being on the planet. And they would train the public that you're just another creature, and maybe an inferior creature. You see what I'm saying? This is the whole agenda here. And when you look at all these characters are into with ecology, sustainability, too many of you, the wrong kind of people, etc., etc. And here's what the Nature Conservancy, you see, they're allied with, right? It's a charitable environmental organization headquartered for the U.S. in Arlington, Virginia. Is there anything else in Arlington, Virginia, folks? You think? A massive charitable environmental organization. So it is to conserve lands and waters on which life depends. Interesting, eh? The Conservancy pursues non-confrontational, pragmatic solutions, namely brainwashing the children, to conservation's challenge, working with partners including indigenous communities, businesses, governments, multilateral institutions, and other non-profits. Well, do you get a vote in that? No. It's interesting to even just reading that kind of stuff here. The Nature Conservancy now impacts conservation in 72 countries, including 50 states of the United States. Most of the folk wouldn't even know that themselves. The Conservancy has over 1 million members and has protected more than 119 million acres of land and thousands of miles of rivers worldwide. It also operates more than 100 marine conservation projects globally. The organization's assets total $6.71 billion as of 2015. It's the largest environmental non-profit by assets and by revenue in the Americas. Yeah. Interesting. And they're into land grabs all over the place too, under the guise of conservation. And I've given the talks about the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. Well, he's the head of so many organizations in the past, given profound statements, right in your, I mean, there's nothing hidden about this guy, and he runs all these different world wildlife funds and all the rest of it. Too many people, when there's too many animals, you have to kill them off, and you have to look at people much the same way, etc., etc., etc. One of his main speeches in Switzerland, he talked like that, in fact, but quite openly about it. So all these conservation things are really very false. They have a mission, and so much of the best farming territory across Africa and so on, belonging to the World Wildlife Fund and all the other organisations he's head of, it's the best farming areas. They can't allow folk into farm. It'd be the same elsewhere too, folks. Interesting, eh? Also, I'll put up Antonio Guterres from the United Nations, his opening remarks at the World Government Summit in 2017. World Government Summit. That's the guy they put in charge of the, I think it was United Nations eventually. And they have the same speeches too when they go to the World Economic Forum. Again, getting back to Facebook, how they're basically going to give you a new privacy-focused vision, which you can reverse that if you want. Because if you never learn, folks, it's your own fault. A privacy-focused vision, and confirms that WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram messaging will be merged in a single platform. Well, there you go. Do you really think there are different private organizations out there running all? It's one massive organization with many faces, with the internet. And as you watch, I sometimes read a story just to give you a little start and shock into life. Real life child snatcher reveals how she's paid £15 per abduction by Philippine gangs, who set her a quota of 2 a week and then sell them to paedophiles with prices determined by their looks. This is one person who was caught, right, in the Philippines. £15 per abduction, that's a lot of money for the Philippines. A female kidnapper has revealed sickening details of how gangs abduct children in the Philippines to sell to foreign paedophiles with bonuses for how pretty they are. Lilibeth Bustamante was caught trying to walk away with a 10-year-old girl in Paracas City on February the 20th. She was playing in front of her house when Bustamante took her by the arm and told her to come with her to the store, but a neighbour intervened when he noticed the girl asking for help. So she was caught, and she spilled the beans. And so it was a 10-year-old girl she was abducted on this occasion in February. And then she told the police the details, horrifying details of the criminal gangs who sell the children into sex slavery. And this would be across the world too, I bet you. And they'll put them into all these different movies, sex movies. And there'll be a waiting list of these pervs, I'm sure, wanting to get first go with these children. And do you think they're going to let these children live? They can recognize people, folk. You better understand what's happening in the world here. And no one cares because you've been taught that life is cheap by those who rule you. They've trained you step by step, like Huxley saying, knocking you off your pedestal. And that's already done. And people have been taught they're minus, oh, so what, you know. And your daily fare is getting towards pedophilia if you're watching television with the stuff they're pushing on it. And by the way, that eventually, I've said before, that eventually the agenda is they knock the pillars down step by step. The next step is for, they call it intergenerational sex. There'll be no such term as pedophilia, and there'll be no crime either, as they normalize it. And they normalize it when the society is no longer a strong society with strong cultural morals. That's when they do it. And we're already there. Look what the folk are watching. They're stuck on, they're addicted to basically pornography. Even the stuff they show on mainstream television as entertainment is just the same kind of stuff, even in the ads. So articles like this should, at one time, you would have had mass movements forming to stop this kind of thing happening. Not anymore, because there's no opposition, and that's where you've been brought to, step by step. Sorry to prattle on too. As I say, I haven't had time to work out anything in any way at all. I generally try to talk from the top of my head, which is what I'm doing tonight. I hope you understand that everything you've been trained to believe is completely different. They have different agendas. That's why George Orwell showed you what the Ministry of Love was. It's the opposite. And the Ministry of Truth and all the other ministries are the opposites, folks. But they train you to believe in the name itself. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. They're here to take care of us. Mm-hmm.